Hello, it's John Heaton. Today I'm going to rise to the challenge and review the White Album. I may have to do this in two parts because there are 30 tracks to review, and I want to keep this video not much longer than 10 minutes, so probably do it in two parts. So this album was released as a double album November 22nd, 1968, and it was a huge seller, and not too many complaints at the time from the fans about it being a double album, but a few people over the years have grumbled about that and claimed that it should have been reduced to a single. I think that theory is ridiculous, and even if you were to do that, nobody is in agreement on which tracks to leave out. In fact, only one friend of mine, Russell Taylor, has actually attempted to reduce it to a single album, and it was an honourable attempt, but it was obviously seriously flawed at the end of the day, because you try leaving out 15 of these tracks, it's not easy. So starts off with Back in the Ussr from Paul, and as one Beatle book said, Paul deserves to be bought a beer every day for the rest of his life just for this track alone. And I think that's true. I think it's a brilliant track and superb rocker. And people say that this album, the White Album, is often just one Beatle singing with the rest of them as a backing band, which I think is a bit of a derogatory comment, and I don't think it's very fair, because I think as a band they helped each other superbly with the arrangements. And ironically, on this song, although Ringo doesn't drum, because he left the band for a brief period during the recording of the White Album, and Paul actually plays the drums. John and George are playing six-string bass, I think, on this track, and the sound that they get is just brilliant. And the energy and excitement, it's a great opener to the album. And then Dear Prudence follows from John, John using his finger-picking acoustic guitar style, which Donovan had taught him not long before at the Maharishi's camp in India. It's a really lovely song. It's about a girl called Prudence who was with them in India, who refused to come out of her tent, and so the words are about that. And another example of how the band supported each other, because Paul's bass line on this song, the way it comes in on the second verse, is just brilliant, and George's guitar as well. So. And the same is true of Glass Onion, which is also from John, by the way. Superb musicianship from all four, and a really good rocking sound, and Ringo's back on drums on this one, having not drummed on the first two tracks of the album. Now, Glass Onion, quite amusingly, refers to at least 4 or 5 Beatles songs, Fixing the Hole, Full on the Hill, Lady Madonna, Walrus, Strawberry Fields. Just for fun, really, but some people got upset by that, and Ian MacDonald in this book takes John to task for doing that and saying it was incendiary and encouraged fanatics. And basically the implication in the book there is that that John had it coming to him, and it's one of the reasons he got killed, which quite frankly is a scandalous argument. He was just having fun, and people shouldn't read anything into it, and if they do, it's 100% their problem, and I feel pretty strongly about that one. So then that moves us on to Paul's second track on the album, Obla D, and another example of brilliant musicianship. John came to the piano when they were trying this for the umpteenth time, pounded out the opening chords, and laid down a superb energetic piano part, which became the basis for the final version. If you listen to the earlier versions on Anthology, there was definitely something lacking about the earlier acoustic versions, and John just took it to that extra level with his piano playing on this track. So I know he went on record saying he wasn't particularly fond of this track, and George as well, but they can't all be fans of every track on every album, but they certainly played their part in creating the masterpieces that are on here. So after Obla D, we get maybe the only slight throwaway on the album for me, Wild Honey Pie, which is a kind of 20-second ditty which they left in because Patty Harrison liked it. And then that goes into Bungalow Bill, which is from John again. It's not his best ever song, but it's fun. And nice catchy chorus, amusing words. Actually Yoko actually gets to sing one of the lines on here. And then that goes into George's first track, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is one of his all-time classics. I think most people agree with that, but there are people who don't, like Ian MacDonald. If you want to read a really pretentious piece of writing, then read what Ian MacDonald says about While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It's way off the mark, and it's not a bad book, that, by the way. But occasionally he's so off the mark that it's so upsetting for me, I won't go near that book for years. So then we close side one with Happiness is a Warm Gun from John, which I think George said was his favourite track on the album, and I think it's one of Paul's as well. Another example of superb musicianship from all four, good backing vocals, good drumming from Ringo, just a really tight sound, and very amusing words, actually inspired by a gun machine which George Martin showed to John one day in the studio, where the title of the front page was Happiness is a Warm Gun. So nothing to do with shooting up or anything. Then we move on to side two with another masterpiece from Paul, Martha My Dear. Okay, the words don't mean too much, or maybe there's no heavy message behind it, but so what, as I've said before with some of Paul's songs, it doesn't have to have a message to be great. This is melodically very strong, almost effortless in its melody, and I love it. And George Martin does a very tasteful arrangement on the brass. And then that, which takes us to John's classic I'm So Tired. Brilliant laid-back vocal. I think Karen Tyler pointed out his vocal on this track. It really is outstanding. John himself in the Playboy interview in 1980 pointed out this one as one of his favourites and said he sang it well. He sure does sing it well. And the words are amusing, especially the reference to Sir Walter Raleigh, who invented cigarettes at the end. Brilliant, and great backing vocals from Paul on the last line of each chorus. Just a lovely sound to the song, and it's up there, and there's no way they could have left this one off. Well, actually, so far on the album, the only one I could think of leaving off would be Honey Pie, and possibly Bungalow Bill, but there again, horses for courses. So then we get, quite amusingly, all the songs about animals are sequenced together. So Blackbird, Piggies, Rocky Racoon all come together. Blackbird is one of Paul's all-time classic acoustic ballads, inspired by the civil rights movement in the 60s, and lovely, again using the kind of acoustic guitar picking technique that Donovan had showed them in India, I think, and very effectively. The words are timeless, one of Paul's best ever lyrics. Piggies from George is an amusing political comment with some pretty nasty digs in the lyrics. Quite amusing, nice tune, nice production from George Martin, nice use of strings. I think Chris Thomas plays the organ on this. Just overall nice production. And Rocky Racoon from Paul, excellent, amusing song about a guy called Rocky Racoon who gets into a few scrapes, and there's a nice jangling piano from George Martin. And I think John and Ringo were on this track, but not George, if I remember rightly. So they didn't always play on every single track. So in that sense it wasn't a band album like some of the others, but Ringo's only track on the album, Don't Pass Me By, is next, and it's not his best ever song, but it's pretty catchy, and I think this was when George went to see Bob Dylan and the band after this album's release. The members of the band, Robbie Robertson and co, told George that this was their favourite track on the album. It's a nice country and western song. I think only Paul and Ringo play on it. I think Paul's playing the organ or the piano, and I think Ringo's also playing the piano. Quite amusing words. This is quite interesting on the mono version because it's a lot faster, kind of speeded up vocal. A bit strange, really. Why don't we do it in the road from Paul? Apparently John was upset because he was not invited to play on this session. So I think it's just Paul with Ringo on drums. Very simple, let it all hang out lyrics, amusing, and I suppose, you know, a sign of the 60s and the kind of free love period that it came from. But, you know, a very short, amusing track. And again, there's no way you're going to leave this track off the White Album, okay? Don't care how short it is. Then we come to the last two tracks on side 2, which are I Will, a glorious ballad from Paul, probably one of my top 5 ballads of his. The tune is just superb. It's got that really nice laid-back feel, and it was written in India, and you can almost tell because of the peaceful atmosphere of the words and the tune. And then just to follow that straight up with Julia from John, which is a similarly beautiful acoustic number. Just him playing, actually. I don't think any of the other Beatles are on that track. Just sublime. So that closes side 2, and with that I'll close part 1 of this video. So I'll see you for part 2.